think of international organisations that work to maintain global peace and cooperation around the world, who do you think of? For me, the first organisation that springs to mind is the United Nations. It's an intergovernmental organisation that consists of 103 member states. Pretty much every country around the world is involved in it. And it started up after World War II to prevent such a conflict from ever happening again. So why did I want to speak about the UN? For me, it'd be a kind of a dream organisation to work for. It has such a multicultural, diverse workplace from people all around the world, all aimed at promoting world peace and working to improve our planet in whatever way it can. That can be environmental, to prevent wars when disasters happen, such as earthquakes or tornadoes. They provide aid straight away on the ground to improve the situation. It's been vital to peace and international relations across the world since World War II, and in the main has done quite a good job at doing so, as we haven't had a global war like that happen since, and is as crucial today as it has ever been. People work there that represent their countries from all around the world, and these people do it in a professional and a healthy debate kind of manner, which helps to lead to better cooperation between countries and helps come to peaceful resolutions. So I also wanted to talk about the different kind of types of work at the UN, and I'm going to cite the UN website in this. They list 5 different types of jobs that fall under 5 different categories. So firstly, you have the professional and higher categories. These involve management and operational support, economic and social development, political, peace and security, and information systems. Most of these workers are based at the United Nations headquarters, which are in New York, but can also be found at their smaller offices around the world. Secondly, there's general service, which are lower skilled jobs, which usually only require like a high school diploma for workers. These involve drivers, electricians, and security men that also can work at a number of different locations. Thirdly, there is the national professional officer type of role. These are the representatives I was speaking about earlier from people around the world that will work in terms of, can work in translation, working to promote and suggest the kind of cultures that different people come from in helping people to cooperate more efficiently. And also really interesting type of job, which I'm going to speak about a bit later, as the humanitarian aid worker, that I find really interesting. And also interpreters. It's also field service agents. These can work in things from administration to logistics and technical support. And finally, you have the senior appointments. These include the very highest of employees at the United Nations, including the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General. So for the humanitarian aid officer, this is a really interesting type of role that I've looked into, and from loads of blogs I read from people that work in this kind of role, it's a very challenging but extremely rewarding job. These people, not only the United Nations offer these roles, but also all very similar humanitarian organisations across the world. So they mainly provide aid and assistance to poverty-ridden or disaster-struck areas across the globe. So quite a lot of these aid workers are currently based in Africa, where poverty is most common, but also in parts of Asia and Latin America it's also very common. These kind of workers, they are very flexible people that can work in, they need to be able to work in a very diverse type of environment. They could be in Northern Africa one week, and the next week they may be sent off to somewhere in Asia where there's been a natural disaster such as an earthquake or a tsunami, and they'll be made to deliver on-the-spot support on the field in a very different range of work. So these could range from nurses and doctors to even English teachers in some areas, but also can work as fundraising project management workers. So they'll be on the ground and they'll cooperate with the headquarters, where they will tell them what is needed, how much food is needed, and how to budget the money most efficiently and get exactly what is needed on the ground. It normally requires a master's degree to get into this type of work, and normally an undergraduate degree isn't enough. A lot of not-for-profit organisational work, it's like being a professional sportsman. Just because you really like it doesn't mean you're going to become a professional. So even with a really good heart, with like humanitarian aid work, isn't enough to get a job. You also need to have years of voluntary experience, really, but also be extremely qualified and well educated. So a master's degree, normally in an international subject, such as international relations or international studies, is usually required. But it can also be a bit more broad than that, so like a business subject would also be quite helpful. It's a challenging but extremely rewarding career where you can make a real impact. A lot of the, like I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of the employees in this area usually refer to one day it can be the best job in the world, but the next it can be the most heartbreaking and challenging job in the world. So they have to be extremely flexible and adaptable and get on with their day-to-day business the same all the time. I cite a lot of this work from the Global Humanitarian Assistance website. I'd like to show you a video about some of the work the humanitarian aid workers do. It's a good insight into their day-to-day work.
Humanitarian work is extremely complex, it's very, very demanding. It of course, is extremely urgent at all times, and is normally in the context of an emergency. But equally, a lot of the crises, particularly in conflict, are turning out to be protracted crises. So then it's about knowing how to maintain the levels of activity that are going to meet satisfactorily and sufficiently the humanitarian need. It's a huge challenge, but one which I don't think any of us have any choice but to daily try and continue to meet. It's very important for the credibility of those who have a mandate under the UN to give a voice to the voiceless, those of us who are the advocate for people in need, that we have the credibility that we have been to see it for ourselves. I was in a unity state in South Sudan. I was able to meet some of those who had been coming through the swamps. For many, many of the millions who live in South Sudan, their choice is an extraordinarily stark choice of fleeing or be killed, which you really do feel when you are talking to the people on the ground. There can be no other higher purpose than trying to be part of the broad team that is saving lives and trying to give people a chance to have more dignity, more opportunity. And ultimately the UN is the world's biggest organisation that carries those aspirations to meet human need when it arises.
Yeah, so I wanted to, that hopefully could give you a better insight into the actual sort of work they do on the ground as a humanitarian aid worker. And it would especially give you more of an introduction of the actual work the United Nations does as such a vital organisation to maintain world peace around the world. And in particular, the work and jobs involved in the people that actually make the organisation tick on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for listening.